In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. O hearts that seek truth, O eyes that weep for the oppressed, O souls awakened by the call of justice. We have entered the sacred month of Muharram al-Haram, the first month of the Islamic calendar. But this is no ordinary beginning. This is not a time of celebration or festivity. This is a time when history cries, when heaven mourns, and when every believer's chest tightens with pain. Because Muharram begins with remembrance. It begins with blood. It begins with Karbala. On the first of Muharram, Imam Hussain ibn Ali, the beloved grandson of the Holy Prophet, arrived in the barren land of Karbala. He was not welcomed by flowers but by swords. He did not find peace but a storm of betrayal. And yet, he did not turn back. He planted his tents on that dry earth, knowing this would be the land of his martyrdom. Knowing that every drop of blood spilled here would become a river of light for the oppressed of every era. Karbala is not just a place. It is a message. It is the voice of Hussain echoing through time saying, if you see truth being buried, rise, even if you stand alone. It is the lesson that faith is not proven by silence. It is proven by sacrifice. In Karbala, there were only 72 standing against thousands. But they had something the enemy never could. They had certainty, loyalty, and divine purpose. Each of them wrote their names in the book of eternity, not with ink, but with their blood. Ali Akbar, the son whose face shined like the prophet. Qasim, the young nephew who longed for martyrdom. Abbas, the flag bearer whose loyalty was unmatched. And the infant Ali Askar, whose silent martyrdom shook the throne of Allah. And at the heart of it all stood Hussain, alone, wounded, grieving, yet unbroken. He stood not because he hoped to win the battle, but because he refused to surrender to falsehood. His last prostration on the burning sands of Karbala was not the end, it was the beginning. Because from that sajda, Islam rose again, not in power, but in purity. And let us not forget Zainab and Sak, the sister of Hussain, the voice of Karbala. When the swords were silent, it was her words that roared. When the enemies thought the story had ended, she began it. From the throne of Yazid's court, she declared the truth. Not with an army, but with dignity. Because Karbala teaches you truth does not die when the swords fall. It lives when the tongues rise. O believers, Muharram is not just for tears. It is for transformation. Cry for Hussain, yes, but also walk in his footsteps. Don't just wear black on your clothes. Wear his courage on your soul. Don't just beat your chest. Awaken your conscience. Stand with the oppressed. Speak for the voiceless. Resist injustice in all its forms. The month of Muharram is sacred because it holds the pain of the Prophet's household. But it is also powerful because it reminds us that one stand can change the world. Hussain did not die in Karbala. He lives in every heart that refuses to bow to tyranny. So let us raise our hands not just in mourning, but in prayer. Let us bow our heads not just in sorrow, but in submission to the truth Hussain gave his life for. Let Karbala live in us every day, in every choice, in every breath. Ya Hussain!
Imam Hussain P.B. purchases the site for the graves. The holy Imam gathered the people of the surrounding places, the owners of the plain of Karbala, and purchasing the land from them gifted same to the people of Banu Asad. Addressing the males among them, he said, on the 10th day, Ashura of this month, Muharram, you shall see us lying here slain, our bodies lying on the plain with our heads severed and taken away. I request you to kindly bury us, and when our devotees come to visit our graves, hold them in honor as your guests, and point out to them the places of our burial. He then addressed the ladies, O virtuous ladies, if your husbands, fearing the wrath of Yazid, do not bury us, you kindly encourage them to do it, or do it yourselves. The holy Imam then turned to the young children in the gathering and addressing them said, O innocent ones, if your parents, out of fear of the wrath of the ruler, do not bury us, you may, by way of playing, bring some mud in your laps and throw it upon our bodies and hide them. The appeal was so touching that the whole gathering wept. Arrival of Yazid's forces. The brute Ibn Ziyad at Kufa got the information of Imam Hussein's getting out of the control of her, and also learned that Imam Hussain had camped near the river Euphrates, known as the Al-Qama. On the 3rd of Muharram, Ubayd Allah son of Ziyad sent an army counting 4,000, led by Umar son of Saad Abi Waqqas, were the first to move towards Karbala. His orders were to get Imam Hussain to surrender to Yazid. When Imam Hussain refused, Umar son of Saad told Ubayd Allah son of Ziyad to send more troops. Ubayd Allah son of Ziyad had ordered all the men in Kufa to come out and join the army to fight against Hussain. Anyone not doing so would be killed. Whoever brings the head of Hussain will get a great prize, and I will make him the governor of Al-Ray province. Regiment after regiment began to pour in on the plain of Karbala from all sides until they were 30 zeros. 30,000, and ultimately the enemy's forces compelled Hussain to shift his camp from the bank of the river to the interior of the burning desert. Hussein's brother, the lion-hearted Abbas, objected to this demand from the enemy. claiming priority of occupation and the right of the son of the Holy Prophet, the Holy Imam, to stay where he had first camped. When the enemy wished to march towards the Holy Imam's camp, the brave Abbas at once drew his sword and stood firm and shouted to the men, "If you advance one step forward, you shall lay headless." There, knowing the bravery, valor, and prowess of the valiant son of Oli, the Lion of God, none cared to step forward. But Hussein called his brother, saying, "Brother Abbas, let not bloodshed be initiated from our side. Let them occupy any place they like. They call themselves my grandfather's followers. Let them enjoy every comfort they want. We shall suffer for them, being away from the water. When God is with us, brother, what if the river is far away from us?" With these words, Imam Hussain P.B.UH, in order to avoid bloodshed, issued orders to shift this camp several miles into the interior of the burning desert, and it was immediately done. Also, Imam Hussain did not want the people to think that the battle in Karbala was about water. No room for any criticism left if the Holy Imam had stayed at Medina and got slain there. It would have been said, why did he not migrate to Makkah to take shelter in the great sanctuary there? He did go to the Kaaba, and if he had stayed there to be killed by Yazid's agents, it would have been said, why did he not leave the holy place to avoid bloodshed in the great sanctuary? Imam Hussain left Makkah too, even though it was the very eve of the pilgrimage. And if he had gone to Kufa, it would have been said why he went to a place where his deputy Muslim had been killed, and when he knew the situation there. Imam Hussain avoided going to Kufa. Imam Hussain also availed of the opportunity given by her. Now, when the enemy became cruel, heartless, and aggressive, he avoided bloodshed by shifting his camp into the interior of the desert, abandoning the bank of the river to the enemy. Imam Hussain P.B.UH besieged at Karbala when the whole plain of Karbala was full with Yazid's regiments, and the Imam Hussain's camp was totally surrounded by the enemy's forces. Son of Saud, commander of the brute armies, met Imam Hussain on the banks of the river and demanded allegiance on behalf of the tyrant Yazid, and said, "If you pay homage to Yazid, everything will go well for you, and whatever worldly comforts and privileges you desire for will be at your disposal. Otherwise, it will end in a wholesale massacre of yourself and all your dear ones here." Imam Hussain firmly refused to pay the allegiance, saying, "Tell Yazid to tempt with the worldly comforts to those who are after this world. I am the Imam, the representative of the Apostle of God. I shall never yield to the one who believe not in God, and who defied the word of the Lord, in word and deed, and who spread godlessness on the earth. Let any calamity befall on me and my dear ones. Will of the Lord shall be followed. Hussain will cheerfully meet any catastrophe, but never surrender truth to falsehood." Water supply to Imam Hussain's camp cut off at last on the 7th, Muharram 61. Hera, the commander of Yazid's forces, received orders to cut off all sources of supply to the Holy Imam's camp, and not allow even a drop of water to reach any of the inmates therein. It can better be imagined than described what the condition of Imam Hussain's camp would have been under the scorching Arabian sun. The camp was in the midst of the burning desert, with the heat waves blowing from all sides. The unavailability of water, with nothing to feed even the young children, the wriggling of the babies for milk, which the poor mothers, who were themselves suffering from the killing thirst, could not give, caused distress. What a torturous situation it must be, and how did those holy ones suffer all these unbearable tortures? It is very difficult for any human mind to conceive, but all these are facts which the holy Imam and his godly companions suffered with wonderful fortitude and patience. Over and above all these tortures, the sight of the enemy's forces preparing all around for the massacre and a wholesale destruction was there. Before the ladies and the children in the besieged camp, her remembered how kind Imam Hussain was when he needed water. He asked Umar son of Saud to give water to Imam Hussain's camp, or at least to the children, but Umar son of Saud showed no pity. Note, Abbas the standard-bearer had already come to receive the nickname Saka water carrier, as earlier, on one or two occasions, At nights he had been able to pass through the enemy's ranks to fetch water for the children. It was not the case that they had not drunk any water for 3 days and nights. Access to water had been closed for 3 days and nights, but during this time they had been able to get some water on 1 or 2 occasions, including the night of Ashura, when they had taken bath and washed their bodies. Enemy decides to attack all efforts of the enemy through temptations, promises, persecutions, and tortures to persuade the holy Imam to yield to Yazid were in vain. Even the killing heat of the desert and the thirst of 3 continuous days suffered by himself, his faithful companions, the helpless ladies, and even the innocent infants and the babies, could not move the holy Imam to effect the least change in the strength of his will re-establish the truth, paying any price the task might demand. On the 9th of Muharram, a final warning was sent to Imam Hussain from Umar son of Saud that if he did not surrender, he would be killed. Imam Hussain refused to bow down to his threats. The enemy's forces advanced towards the camp of the holy Imam to effect a wholesale massacre of all the inmates therein. Imam Hussain sent word to the enemy's commander, Umar son of Saud, through the brave Abbas with the request for a night's time to spend it in his last prayers to the Lord, which was at first refused, but ultimately with much reluctance granted. The holy Imam and Umar son of Saud confer. The holy Imam sent for the enemy's commander Umar son of Saud and proposed the following: "Leave me, and I shall quit the Muslim empire with my whole family and children and live in some non-Muslim lands. I shall go away to Yemen or to Iran or to the far-off Hind Eye, India." The tyrant answered, "It can never be so." Imam Hussain said, "Will you at least allow having some water for the helpless ladies and innocent babies who are dying of thirst in my camp?" The tyrant replied, "First pay bait allegiance and then take the water from the river." Imam Hussain at last said, "Umar son of Saud, why you destroy the house of the Holy Prophet? If the whole world were to be given to me to rule over, I shall never yield to the tyrant." Imam Hussain had done the best possible to avoid bloodshed, but every offer for a peaceful settlement was rejected and the surrender to Yazid was insisted upon. Imam Hussain then decided to fight the might of the devil for the truth and to surrender his all in the way of the Lord and to demonstrate to the human race what bravery, steadfastness, patience, and fortitude, ever in the worst of the painful sufferings, those who really love God should put up with to defend the truth and uphold it. When all efforts through exhortations to the enemy's forces proved unfertile, and the only alternative left was to fight for the cause of truth, the holy Imam decided first to prove the miraculous strength and the matchless prowess the godly ones possessed, and how bravely the huge host of the enemy could be resisted, and then to surrender himself and his dear ones to drink the cup of martyrdom and to fulfill the covenant of the Lord to save the truth for all times. Imam Hussain asked Umar son of Saud, "Will you at least agree to conduct tomorrow's battle in single combats between one from either side?" Umar son of Saud consented, but the treacherous brute did not keep to his promise. On the evening of the 9th, 6,600 men led by Shimr son of Ziljoshan were the last detachment to reach Karbala. At last, on the 7th of Muharram, 61 Hijra, a command arrived that would mark one of the darkest turns in the tragedy of Karbala. Yazid's oppressive regime, fearing the unwavering stance of Imam Hussain A.S., issued a brutal and inhumane order: cut off all sources of water and supplies. Not a single drop must reach the camp of Hussain. This decree, delivered to the commander of Yazid's forces, Umar ibn Saud, was not a military strategy. It was psychological warfare of the most merciless kind. Immediately, soldiers were deployed to block access to the Euphrates River, the lifeline of the desert. They formed a barricade along its banks, armed and alert, ready to strike down anyone who dared to draw water, even for a child, even for an infant. From that moment onward, the camp of Imam Hussain A.S., comprising men, women, children, and the family of the Prophet Muhammad P.B.UH, was trapped in a siege of thirst. Under the blistering Arabian sun, where the sands themselves seemed to burn with fury, the companions of the Imam faced the slow, suffocating agony of dehydration. Try to imagine it, if one dares. Children with dry, cracked lips crying Al-Atash, Al-Atash, thirst, thirst, their small hands reaching out for water that would never come. Mothers, desperate to soothe their little ones, offering comfort instead of water, tears instead of relief. Brave warriors who had fought countless battles before, now weakened not by swords, but by the slow torment of a dry throat and burning breath. And yet, amidst this suffering, not a single word of complaint escaped the camp. They bore their thirst with the strength of faith, the patience of the pious, and the courage of those who knew they were standing on the side of truth. What was their crime? Why were they punished so harshly? They had refused to pledge allegiance to a tyrant. They had chosen honor over humiliation, and for that even water was denied to them. The heat of the sun scorched their skin. The dust of the desert clung to their clothes, their animals cried out, the children sobbed in their sleep. But through it all, Imam Hussain A.S. stood firm, his face calm, his heart steady, reminding his people that true victory lies not in surviving tyranny, but in resisting it. It can better be imagined than described what that camp looked like in those days. But no pen, no tongue, no brush could ever do justice to the pain, the patience, and the purity that radiated from those tents. This was not just a thirst of the body, it was a trial of the soul, and in Karbala the soul of Islam triumphed, even as its body bled. Despite every tactic, every deceitful offer, every form of torment that Yazid's forces could devise, all efforts to break the spirit of Imam Hussain A.S. proved futile. The enemies of truth, armed with promises of power, temptations of safety, bribes of wealth, and threats of annihilation, tried relentlessly to convince the grandson of the Holy Prophet P.B.UH to bow down before tyranny. They pleaded, persuaded, pressured, and ultimately persecuted. But the heart of the Imam was not made of flesh alone. It was forged in the fire of divine purpose, shaped by the teachings of Rasulullah, nurtured in the arms of Fatima S.A., and strengthened by the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib A.S. Not even the burning furnace of Karbala's desert, where the sands blistered under the sun, where the wind carried the dry cries of children, where no water touched their lips for 3 days and nights, could shake the resolve of this noble soul. The children cried in thirst, their frail bodies weakening with each moment. The women silently bore the heat, fanning their little ones with trembling hands. The faithful companions, parched and exhausted, stood guard around the camp, ready to give their lives at a moment's notice. And the infants, pure, sinless, moaned softly, their tongues dry, their tiny bodies growing cold. And still Imam Hussain A.S. stood unbent, unbroken, and unwavering. He did not waver when they offered him safety in exchange for silence. He did not flinch when they promised power in return for allegiance. He did not submit when they threatened his family, his children, or his very life. Why? Because this mission was not a political rebellion. It was a divine responsibility. Hussain A.S. had not set out to gain a throne. He rose to resurrect the soul of Islam, to cleanse it from the filth of corruption, and to re-establish the truth, even if it meant sacrificing everything he held dear. He could have saved his life. He could have accepted Yazid's rule and walked away. But Hussain A.S. knew that one man's surrender could lead to the death of a nation's conscience. So he chose instead to offer his own life, the lives of his sons, brothers, friends, even his 6-month-old infant, as the price for truth, dignity, and eternal justice. The world had never seen such determination. Even the angels wept as the dust of Karbala turned red with the blood of the martyrs. But Hussain A.S. did not take a single step back. His will was a mountain in the storm. His soul was a torch in the darkness. His message was clear. Truth is never to be sold. Justice is never to be silenced, and oppression is never to be obeyed. In that moment, Hussein A.S. was not just a man, he was the embodiment of divine resistance. His sacrifice would echo through every age, igniting hearts with courage, and teaching mankind that some principles